Welcome back to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Rowe. Today, we had a guest on the podcast, Sam Fonoimoana, who is the founder and CEO of a company called DataJoin, which is doing some unique things with data integration between and across multiple platforms. So we talked about trends in data, how marketers can use, leverage, and interpret data for their benefit. What we're seeing in the market, what we're seeing best-in-class companies doing, and talked a little bit about his background and his story. It is, technically a startup, and he saw a gap in the market, created a product for his own use case, and turned that into a company, which is now growing, and they've raised some capital. So very exciting. Really enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully you guys find some value in it. Please give us a like, subscribe to the podcast. If you enjoy this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague. Let's dive right in. Welcome back, everybody. We have a special guest with us today, Sam Fonoimoana. He is actually the founder and CEO of a company called DataJoin. Welcome, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Taylor. Glad to be on the show with you.
Absolutely. So quickly, before we get into your company and some of our topics today, introduce yourself to our audience. Talk to us a little bit about your background, as I know it's a bit unique to get into this space.
Yeah, so my background in school, I actually studied business. I studied entrepreneurship, and then I went back as a finance MBA. And so, yeah, definitely, I've never taken a class in computer science or analytics. I'm older. I kind of date the analytics era. Like that didn't exist when I was back in school. But yeah, I started off in finance. Going through like learning EBITDA and debits and credits. I did take a couple of information systems classes and was kind of exposed to this idea that, hey, through some VBA code or through Excel functions, things can be automated, and you can scale things. And so, I took those classes like over 20 years ago, and, that really planted the seeds that took me eventually into tech. Right?
Sure. Absolutely. And I love talking to founders just to kind of get the origin story of, the pain points that they were experiencing themselves and what gaps they saw in the market to actually create the product. So talk to us a little bit about, what DataJoin is and how it was born and where you saw those pain points yourself.
Yeah. So for me, when I started in tech, I started at this lead gen company, and the business model was to generate leads online of people who are interested in going to school, going back to school for universities like University of Phoenix, Kaplan University. And that was really my first time working at a tech startup. They hired me on as the chief statistician, right? I ended up doing actually very little statistics there, but everything I had to do there was about joining data from different systems together. So I would say like that led me down the path of analytics right there. Marketers spending a ton of money on Google ads, generating leads, but really the leads were only good if they ended up enrolling at one of the universities. And so that data was in a different system that our customers owned. And so being able to connect those two systems together, that was basically the lifeblood of the company. Like we won't know how good the leads were unless we could see that all the way through to that student enrollment. And that was it. I was hooked on data after that. At that point, how to get into systems, how to pull data from systems, send it to other systems, how to make sure that you're matching it up properly at the right level.
So. Yeah, absolutely. And data, obviously is gone from a buzzword, if you will, or a trending topic of big data to now, everybody has access to first party data, third party data, all these sorts of things. And as marketers, our tech stacks have evolved and grown over the years. And I know a lot of listeners listening to this have sort of what we call as a Frankenstein tech stack, right? So that problem that you explained of, none of these technologies talking to each other, some of that by design, right? Because there's competing companies that, don't want to play nicely and integrate because they have competing product offerings, right? And so, this idea of being able to connect data for marketers is huge. Is a big question mark of how do we do it, and then ultimately, what do we do once we have the data, right? What do we do with the data to reach our customers the most effective and efficient way possible? So, how have you seen your customers, right? You created this great product, this great tool that allows companies to connect different data points and data sources, and as you mentioned, kind of clean it up and make sure that it's unified and uniform. So what are the use cases that you're seeing most popular in the marketing space for these data connections?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I mean, like you said, there's so much data everywhere. Frankenstein stack, I like that. It's Halloween, I guess. It's true. Like if you look at the stack today, yeah, there's I always mess around and say there's more tools in there than in my toolbox, right? So use cases, I think that's the best. Like, I really like that you let out with that instead of some buzzword. Everything we do here is really use case driven. We can do anything with data, so it's all about doing something useful, with data. And so really all of our use cases, they center around personalization in a big way. I think marketers today, they still have that monumental task of personalization when you add in like the recessionary fears. Like every dollar of budget has to count. It has to, messaging has to hit the mark. It has to be relevant, and if you're not relevant, then you're not really personalizing. And so that's been, we have so many different use cases around that, about helping marketers really get better personalization, better than they've ever had, by using the tools that they already have in their stack. So,
sure, okay. And in terms of these connections, are you seeing a bigger trend in like a CDP, like a customer data platform? Are people bringing this data into their CRM or ERP system? Where is this data living to be most effective for marketers?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different approaches, I guess, out on the market. CDP is definitely one of them. That's the way that all of my marketing analytics background is, to really centralize the data into some sort of a Redshift or a Snowflake, and then you can serve out the insights back to the system. DataJoin is really, going against that. It's doing something different. Probably going against, that's not the right way to say it, but what we're doing is we're bypassing the centralization and saying, hey, you know what? You already have all the different data that you need. It exists across all of your different tools. So we can just send it straight to the other tools, right? For example, we can send very detailed web behaviors about your prospects. Like if they started engaging with your chat, right? Like how valuable would that be to have that data inside of Marketo, tied to a prospect, for their lead qualification? It'd be infinitely valuable to them, right? To have those type of detailed web behaviors. So what we're saying is you're already sitting on the data in the stack. And rather than, centralizing it and serving it back out to you, you know what? We'll just directly pipe it into you, just silently, you log into Marketo, that data's there already as an activity or as a custom object. And you can personalize using that data.
Sure. Okay. So you're really building this around the ability to connect those data points in individual use cases rather than try to maybe overcomplicate it for a small business into a CDP and then try to figure out how do you decipher and make sense of that data.
Yeah, that's right. We rather just kind of take it, use case by use case. I've been on marketing analytics teams. I've led marketing analytics teams at a lot of tech companies, and I know how slow it can go, right? And the marketers, in the meantime, 1 month passed by, 2 months, 5 months, 1 year, and they still don't have the data that they need, because we're trying to build out this huge mother brain, centralized answer any question system, when really they just need a couple of data points and they'd be able to increase their conversion rates.
Who within the company is able to, with your tool, make these sort of connections? Is that something they have to come to DataJoin and ask for connection from A to B, or I know you have a lot of what you call micro integrations kind of built out. So could your average or standard marketer make those connections with your tool, or do they need to involve the development team?
I mean, so to date, it's been more of a white glove offering where we do it really fast. You would just pick the micro integration you want. For example, you want to send Salesforce data into Adobe Analytics. you get with our team, and then grant us access, and then we can go ahead and get it configured within a week, which is lightning fast compared to internal teams. Our product team, we just raised our seed round of funding this past summer, so we've got our product team that's working hard to be able to pump out our first version of the product that's client facing, where any marketer can log in. And I would recommend that you have someone from, for example, for Salesforce to Adobe Analytics, you have someone from the Salesforce team who knows the data points in Salesforce, and someone on the Adobe side who knows where they want to have that written inside of Adobe. You put those two together, they can log in and just be done in like 5 minutes and have it all configured. So
sure. Okay. Well, it sounds pretty simple, and obviously you're making advancements to that with your funding as well with the product team. So that's exciting. Talk to me about the trends in the industry that you're seeing. Obviously, we talked about data is not going away, right? And this need for data, and as you mentioned, need for personalization of data, and I think that's for marketers gotten even more difficult, especially with everybody working from home, and it's very hard to kind of cut through the noise and figure out again what to do with this data. So we talked about this idea of a CDP or a main database, and you're kind of going against the grain and saying we don't necessarily need that. We can connect these 2 points directly. So what type of companies are adapting this trend? Do you see this as a trend in the industry, or is this a trend that you're trying to educate the market in and create some demand for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, I guess I'll just say, first off, for centralizing, I think there will always be a need for centralizing the data. You have to be able to look at the big picture and to be able to forecast out in the future. Marketing teams will need that. I think finance teams will rely on that type of centralized database as well to be able to forecast out the revenues. That being said, I think all the focus has been on that for the last 15 years in marketing. It's been about kind of centralizing the data, serving up the insights. And, you mentioned something earlier, like, are we trying to push a trend? I would say, yes, we are. Like, what we're trying to do is get beyond the insights and really put better behavioral data into all the tools that are inside the stack so that, marketers can activate. Marketers can personalize better. Marketers can actually market to those who are showing high interest, right? Not just remarketing everyone who went to their website once, for example. So this is definitely a trend that we're trying to do. And we're saying, you know what, like marketing analytics teams, still do what you're doing. Do that good work. That's work that I love. That's work that's my background. But marketers, at the end of the day, like, you still need data in your system to do a better job. And we can give it to you like much, much faster. Like, that's what we're built for. And we can do that in parallel with your marketing analytics teams.
Sure. And what sort of guidance are you giving your customers on how to interpret the data and what to do with the data? I mean, I think as marketers, we have so many tools available to us. And, for a while, attribution was like the biggest tool, right? Everybody wanted to know exactly attribution and all the different touch points. And most marketers that have any sort of a tech stack today have some sort of data around attribution. And now, everyone's saying that, last touch attribution is a waste of time, or you're spending too much effort worrying about attribution. You'll never be able to weight it properly based on how the interactions happen. It's not a linear path. It's all over the place. It's consistent, right? So, what are you seeing in terms of trends, and what guidance are you able to give to your clients on, yes, here's the data and here's how to make sense of that to better serve your customers?
Sure. I mean, I could talk about attribution here for a second.
Sure.
I love building out attribution models. I mean, I love the math of it and back testing and coming back and seeing if it did a good job at predicting. However, that being said, outside of the math and all that enjoyment that I had, it caused a lot of time suck, a lot of fist fights in marketing, so to speak. Like, everyone arguing, oh well, what about this? What about that? And so, I guess my thought on attribution is, like, even back before I started DataJoin, I was moving more and more away from attribution. And, more about just getting everything that's possible to grab, like getting every touch possible, right? And not really caring who gets credit, but hey, you know what? Let's look at this deal. let's look at the sequence of every single touch that we know of, right? Of course, there's going to be, I think dark social or that kind of thing that we can't track. But let's look at it as a group. The people who are doing events and marketing, people running each of the different channels, LinkedIn, Google Ads, people who are running the emails, and let's just see what it took to actually get this deal. And then that way, we can know that it's a team effort. And instead of, fighting over who gets credit, let's just look at one of these deals. Let's look at 10 of these deals, 20, 50. That's much more better use of time in my mind, is to just understand as a marketing team together, like what the team effort that it actually takes. So that's kind of my thought there on attribution. I love building out the models, like I said, but I really feel like a lot of people can get rat-holed there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. And we've seen, companies cut spend in channels because because of their attribution model. And I've seen, the opposite, or spend too much in channel because, Google Ads, for example, was getting, 100% of that attribution credit. And it's kind of crazy, right? And, as marketers, sometimes we talk about on this podcast a lot, like just thinking logically as a marketer, right? Like, what are you trying to do with this channel? And does the data tell us that we served this message to this client and they interacted with it, they engaged with it, right? And at that point, you're doing your job as a marketer. You're trying to educate your prospect. You're trying to get in front of them. So, where at in the funnel, if you will, they consume the content, how long they, how much that, you might not ever be able to measure that, and all your customers are different, right? So like you said, it's a rabbit hole that you could go down, and you can make a lot of mistakes by trying to focus too much on that. So I think, understanding we have this data, we have access to this, but we have to think a little bit logically on what this data is telling us and what we're trying to accomplish here.
Exactly. I mean, my last thought on that, I remember building out, not an attribution model, but just getting every single touch point that we could get our hands on, and to say, oh, this is great. So for this deal, it got warmed up by a couple of Facebook and LinkedIn ads. That makes sense, right? And then, they ended up going to some sort of an event like 1 month later, and we scanned their badge there. And then 1 week later, they went on to do a Google search and clicked on the Google ad. And so, Google ads, sure, it had the last touch, but look at everything that played the part. Like, we had the awareness behind that part. We had the event, the guys warming it up like big time, and then boom, they were ready to talk to somebody. So,
yeah. Yeah, and you never know, right? I mean, those people may not have stopped at that booth if they never saw the ad, right? They might have walked by the booth and they say, "Oh, I recognize that ad," or maybe that was subconsciously, right? They stopped by because they didn't realize that they had seen it before, but it sounded familiar, it sounded trustworthy, right? So, and the same thing with the Google ad, right? So maybe because of that, they were warmed up to the idea, and they said, "Well, let's still do our due diligence and narrow down a couple of top vendors for the solution." And then, of course, that company that was serving them ads, they were reading the content on their website, they were at the trade show, automatically, got a click and showed up. And also you get that additional credibility, right? Because you could say, well, why do I need Google ads then? Well, now I'm going to Google to do my research to narrow it down to 3 to 5 vendors. And, this company that I already have heard about 2 to 3 times shows up at the top of the search, both organically and paid. How do you measure that, right? They might not even click on that ad, but just being served that ad, they say, well, yeah, okay, they are one of the top players because I've seen them 4 or 5 times now. So it's almost impossible to kind of measure that, but you have to just look at the buyer's journey as comprehensively as possible and use the data to, again, serve the right message to the right people in the right channel.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. You can't measure everything. We like to do self-reported attribution. Like, seems like everyone's doing that today, which is great. But I think you just make the most of what you have. Now, DataJoin doesn't do attribution, but we definitely, focus on that same principle, like making the most out of the mountains of data that you do have. So,
sure. So I'm curious with DataJoin. In the rise of kind of the marketing operations role, for whatever reason, marketing is always a couple of years behind sales, right? This sales operations, Salesforce administrator, Salesforce, data analytics has been a role for quite a while, right? Sales always gets the new tools in budgets and departments and titles and all those type of things. So I feel like marketing is kind of catching up to that, maybe surpassing that in some ways. So, the role of marketing operations, I'm assuming would be some of the people you're working with on the data side in conjunction with, data analysis or someone like that internally there. So what sort of trends are you seeing in companies that are adapting a marketing operations role or department?
No, I think one trend that I'm seeing, and one that we're trying to push as well, is this idea of behavioral based audiences, right? I think today when people think of targeting or high intent based targeting, if you did a Google search for that, probably Clearbit would pop up, some data enrichment company. That's sure, like those tools are very good at giving you job title, industry account, and giving you this type of demographic data.
Mm-hmm.
What we're saying here at DataJoin, and what I think the marketing ops people are catching on to, is that, hey, like people don't just buy, like they don't have high intent just because I have the badge of CMO, right? Or because I'm in this industry. You can see their intent by what they do, right? And like, of course, the best would be if you can get on a call with them and pick their brain, but that doesn't hardly happen. But what you can track that you're sitting on is everything that they do on your website. And I'm not just talking about like what pages that they went to that Marketo can track out of the box, but I'm talking about the detailed web behavior, right? Like, did they start a chat session, or did they, start this ungated video or download an ungated piece of content? Did they play with your pricing calculator 3 times? Like these are the detailed web behaviors that if you could have these data points, like in your email system or back in your ad platforms, like you could remarket, much more intelligently than any other, Clearbit data. It's not going to give you that level of remarketing. Zoom Info is not going to give you that level of remarketing capability. So behavioral based targeting is really what we're trying to push. And the good news is, like, if you're already using like a web analytics, you're already sitting on that data. And so we're just here to, push that out, make it easy for you guys, so that critical data can be in all your systems.
Absolutely. Are you recommending that companies build like lead scoring models around that data, the behavioral based data, as well as the, explicit data that they may give, like you said, their title or job position or industry or something like that? Is that how they're taking that data to the next level, or is it simply through, serving, specific ads to people through segmentation?
Yeah, so my 2 thoughts there. I mean, for the marketing automation folks, yeah, I would definitely layer this data into your lead scoring model. This is what we recommend. Most lead scoring programs are built on demographic and behavioral data. And I'm not talking about like, did they open an email or did they click an email? Like that's not really, that's not that strong of a behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about, being able to layer in all these detailed behaviors from your web analytics. That will definitely strengthen the quality of the lead. And so we are definitely recommending that for lead qualification in general. If your job is to serve up the best leads to sales so that they could take it to the finish line, like this is going to be like a powerful weapon that's already in your back pocket, and we're just putting it there for you. For the ad platforms, I feel like, there's probably already 100 people out there. Let's just say, for example, there's 100 people out there who are ready to buy. You just got to find them. There might be another, 20 to 30 who are on the fence that you can convince them, right? Mm-hmm. So let's just run with this example for a second. So if you're doing current remarketing inside of Google Ads or Facebook, you would spend like a certain amount of money to be able to find those today. What we're saying is that if you can track the behaviors, you could spend half that budget and you can still find those 100 people, then you can still find those 20 to 30 people as well. Because instead of just remarketing everyone to went to your website, doesn't matter if they were a student or a competitor or a bot, like you could actually just remarket to those who came to your site, spent 10 minutes plus, went to 3 different pages, engaged with your widget, right? And those guys, that's part of the 100 right there. And we're saying that you could spend half of your budget because now you can know exactly who they are instead of just remarketing to everyone who went to your website.
Yeah. And that's obviously extremely powerful. So I know, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, you're trying to educate your market a little bit, and maybe challenge some of the status quo in terms of how this data is managed and how companies operate internally. So I'm curious to know for our listeners as well that are in similar situations, what are you doing, for your own marketing and your own customer acquisition strategy?
Yeah, so we're a startup. I mean, we barely started spending on ads probably the last 3 months. And so a lot of what we're doing, I mean, one thing that I just started up even just yesterday is I started up a Slack channel that's dedicated towards all things Adobe Analytics integration, right? And it's very small right now. But for me, it's a place where like my top customers, I've invited like our top customers to go there. And I told them, hey, you know what? Like, this is a humble beginning, but I want us to be the place where everyone turns to. Like, if they want to know how to get data, that behavioral data in and out of Adobe Analytics, they want to send it to Salesforce. They want to pull data from Salesforce into it, want to send it to Facebook. I want for this channel, like, there's no one better to talk about it than us, right? Than me and my customers and, friends of my customers who also are solving similar problems. And so that's one thing that I'm really excited about. We do have a humble beginning, but I think it's great. So that way, anyone who wants to really know, they can just join our Slack channel, and you'll automatically be exposed to people who have experience doing this. So
Yeah,
that's one thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. We always preach to our clients that you want to try to lead the conversation, right? You want to be seen as a thought leader, and you want to be that go-to resource for your industry, and that needs to be adapted to who your audience is, right? So, if your audience is online searching and you have the ability to capture that existing demand or capture that research through your website and kind of turn your website into the Wikipedia of your industry, if you will, right? Then you can become that thought leader. But there's other ways, as you mentioned, if we need to be a little bit more small, nimble, Facebook groups, Slack channels. Your audience, obviously, by nature, is very analytical, very in the weeds, very detail oriented, and want to try to figure things out. And collaboration is one of the ways that they can do that. And so I love the idea of kind of having a conversation, a mastermind group, if you will, in a Slack channel. And obviously, the more conversation that you can have around these problems, it's your own market research and marketing tool all in one. And obviously, if your customers are in there, your best customers, they're also your best salespeople. So I think it's a great idea.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Taylor. Like I said, we just started it, so it's a very humble beginning. I can count on two hands, the number of people who are on the Slack channel at the moment.
Sure. So far.
But I think it's great. Like I would put this group, like if anyone is interested in knowing about this is the best group to be able to answer the questions.
Sure.
So,
okay, perfect.
A couple other things that we're doing. I mean, really focusing on the website. I'm telling my team right now, like the main things we have control over is our website and all the content on there, and then our ads, and then our emails. Like that's pretty much those three things. And then our LinkedIn outreach. We're using, some of our team members to reach out with people who have engaged with our emails, that have shown like some intent. We're not just having them bug everybody, but just those who have shown some intent, who have spent time on our site, and to try to reach out that way to see if we could just open up a conversation. We're really all about trying to sound less salesy. That's not really my style. I'm not some polished sales dude from Wall Street or anything like that. But just have real conversations and just say, hey, we noticed on your website you've got all this awesome you've got all this awesome chat on your website. We noticed that you're not capturing that any of that inside of Marketo. We could fix that for you. We've got a free tier. We can get that done for you like in a couple of days. Check out our site. If you're interested, let us know. Right.
Yeah.
These are the type of, messaging that we're trying to do right now at the moment. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right. I'm going to put you on the spot quickly as we're approaching the end of the year. Give me one marketing prediction that you see, whether that's a trend or something that, maybe completely out of left field, but one prediction for 2023.
2023 prediction. DataJoin. No, just kidding.
DataJoin reaches $1 billion in revenue.
No, I mean, I think that's a great question, and just because of what we're focused on, I'd like to think that there is going to be a shift to more of these behavioral based audiences out there for personalization. Right now, the clear bits are dominating everything, and they should definitely get that data if you can. But when you want to take it to the next level, I think people are going to start to see hey, you know what? It's not really like the badge that they wear, but it's what they do. It's really all about what they do. That's going to be the best signals. And so I'm thinking that there should be a push, a shift towards that. Now, of course, that's what our business is trying to do, but that's really what I think is the smartest thing for marketing teams to do. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we've already seen some of those trends with, Facebook and Google, and obviously iOS updates that are limiting the ability to use some of that, third-party data. So I think companies are realizing they need to focus on first-party data, which is why, like you said, there's a shift towards, okay, well, where can we get this? First of all, where can we get this data to build up our databases, Clearbit, ZoomInfo, all those type of companies? But then, what was the advantage of leveraging a tool? Why was Facebook so successful in the past? Well, they had tons of behavioral based targeting capabilities, right? Because they had, cookies and pixels on everybody else's website, just like they had your website. So they knew you could serve an ad to somebody who was looking at, a competitor's website or a directory listing or anything like that, right? And now obviously it's becoming a little bit harder to target those same people. And so you look at, okay, well, can we create and curate some of those experiences on our own web properties? And then can we get some of that behavioral based data to better serve our customers? So I think it's a good prediction. I think we're kind of trending in that way. And obviously people are going to need a tool like yours to start making those connections and making that sort of marketing happen. So great prediction. We'll check back in a year and see if we were right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, I appreciate you joining today. I really enjoyed our conversation. And if anybody wants to check out DataJoin, where can they go?
You can go to datajoin.com.
Okay.
Yep. We were
Perfect.
lucky to get the domain. It's our name now. So.
Yeah. It's a great domain. Okay. Perfect. Well, go check it out. Datajoin.com. Reach out to Sam and the team and see if it's a good fit for you. So please, if you're listening, give us a like, subscribe to the podcast, and of course, tune in next week for a new episode. Thanks, everybody.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by One IMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, one IMS.